Is have to move your chair around so that you can see.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you have a problem.
we can have a second row or something.
Just let her out.
Or turn around, one of the two. Yeah.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I think most of us here have met each other before, so I can skip the self-introduction and start with the idea today. People approach Buddhism from all kinds of angles, with all kinds of propensities on their own, and eventually the end result is that sometimes it seems that, especially from monastics, we feel that we cannot effectively deliver what's been said in the Buddhist text. So what I want to say is that I approach Buddhism from a very social perspective instead of individualistic perspective, even though, especially for Theravada Buddhism, it gives most people the impression that since most of the moral concern as well as teaching address at the individual level, many people have the impression that Theravada Buddhism is essentially or almost all about individual. I cannot agree with that, and surely, especially given that in the United States recently, there's a re-emergence, the concern about people's spiritual state, and spiritual is fundamentally social, not individual. And how does Buddhism address this particular call? And in particular, what is the mechanism that what makes people social? See here the title is all about happiness. Yes, Buddhism, especially Buddhists, we look to establish happy state of being. We also try to achieve harmonious relationship while living among people in the community. But the problem, from my perspective, is that most people, especially Buddhists, seem to take it for granted. Oh, they are satisfied with the statement that it's what Buddhism is all about. But then why? Why are some people more willing to care about other people than others? What makes them willing? We need to find out that mechanism. What's the answer from the Buddhist text? Let's try to find out. But then, for learners, based on my past teaching experience, learners usually learn the central idea better when you give them enough context. And therefore, here's my approach. While addressing the issue of happiness, while also addressing the central concern or central condition in Buddhism, you have to cultivate your virtues to achieve true happiness. My real focus of tonight's presentation will be what are the conducive conditions to enable the cultivation of virtues that eventually lead to happiness. So that's the logic behind the topic. Okay. Let's start from this table. Starting from 2005, by now 2019, the United Nations had supported one particular global scale survey. It's called Happiness Report. The report covers 159 nations. They have identified 6 variables, as you can see from the left column. Okay. It would include local GDP per capita. GDP essentially means the overall domestic production of one state produced per capita, meaning evenly distributed to each one living person within that state, usually used to measure the overall economic status of that country. You don't have to worry about that. And then there's also social support. And then you also have the healthy life expectancy at birth as an indirect indicator for the overall well-being of the population. And then you also have the freedom to make life choices that is particularly important pertaining to my topic today. And then you also have generosity, even more relevant if you think about how the Buddhist virtues start with the notion of generosity, also start from the practice of generosity. And then you also have the perception of corruption. Among the 6 major factors contributing to a population's level of happiness, we can at least identify 4 or 5, if not all of them, okay, relevant. We don't have to worry about those correlation coefficients. It essentially means the changing relationship between 2 conditions. For some other time, we can deal with that. What I want to introduce is those 6 major factors have been identified, and at least 4 or 5 of them are highly relevant to the teaching of Buddhism. Now, since I am presenting this idea in a Burmese temple, I deliberately picked up Myanmar out of the 159 states. Let me give you some background so that you can have the proper context. Among the 157 countries, the top 5 have an average score of happiness of 7.48. Okay, now you can see from Myanmar, it's predominantly 4 point something. The bottom 5 of the 159 states are predominantly so-called sub-Saharan countries, Rwanda, Burundi, Central Africa, Benin, Togo, okay, sub-Saharan country. The average score for the bottom 5 of their happiness state are 2.94. That's really poor. So, okay, comparing to the top 5, Myanmar is not doing too well, but comparing to the bottom 5, not too bad. How about over time? These are the most recent 2 years. Okay? Right. The earliest that I can get data with was 2012, because this survey had changed its title and methodology over time. So right now, the data consistency is somewhat problematic. But the score that you can get from 2012 on to 2018, that was last year, was quite consistent. There were fluctuations. Sometimes during a particular year, it seems that the Burmese people felt happier. Sometimes they're less so. Now, I will justify the importance of happiness later on. For now, just bear with me, okay? This is the current state of one particular country and nation. And the score is based on their individual self-judgment. Why is it I identify from the very beginning those 6 factors? Because, you see, when you try to address people's well-being at a societal level, we usually start by addressing how unequally distributed the social resources are in that particular society, such as GDP, such as income, wealth, power. More recently, we also have the idea of so-called social capital. But didn't it occur to you that the state of happiness is also unequally distributed? And yet we have all kinds of external objective variables, but over the year, only this one is people's self-evaluation. Now, the sense of happiness really hinges on how you directly feel about it. So the importance of the happiness indicator is that by trying to identify what are the factors that may or may not contribute to people's sense of happiness, we can find broader spectrum, more possibilities of truly making people happy. So it has its policy implications. Right, so that's the state right now. To give you more context, look at the people while listening to what I have to say. Overall, suffice to say that the Burmese people, comparing to all 157 countries, the level of happiness belong to the lower half, undoubtedly. What actually make it happen so? Now, without referring to names, I am drawing some of the prestigious monastic Burmese monastics while addressing this particular issue. They believe there are three major factors that could have contributed to the overall lower level of happiness in Myanmar. They believe, number one, lack of metta. Now, here is one particular statement that over time I find it hard to convey the true power, if you will, of Buddhism. Lack of metta, what do we mean? And how that transfer or transform into the actual social policy? How do you judge people by saying lack of metta? Actually, this particular survey offers very useful information. I'll elaborate on that later. All right, so lack of metta. To give you the big picture, say we have poverty, we have famine. Famine is a very good example. It gives you the impression that in some area we don't produce enough food. But let me also give you a different picture. Global-wise, the overall total production of food of human beings is more than sufficient to feed each individual. Why is it is not happening? The matter is about distribution. Distribution has to do, some people care about profits more, about saving people. That would be an exact example of what we mean by lack of metta, the macro level. Therefore, you can relate to at the individual level, some people care more about themselves instead of others or the community. And this particular point did not went unnoticed in Buddhism. You just have to dig it out. Okay? Everything I say today, tonight, you can find it in the text, but just won't be concentrated in one chapter, in one sutra. Okay? So for me, I always see that it is at least a partial responsibility for the monastic to make that point. Okay? To help people understand that. All right, lack of metta. And number two, this is more locally stated, a neglect of religious principles, namely care about the community more than care about yourself. And changing from the spirit of compassion and tenderness to harshness and selfishness. I believe those of you who have recently visited your hometown, it's not hard to find an abundant example of this. Okay. But I would also like to point out that for organized religions, the so-called religious affiliation or members of organized religion have been declining in the United States. But a different survey also point to at least 85% and over for young Americans over the age of 18 identify themselves as also highly spiritual. So you have to think about this. People continue to identify themselves strongly being spiritual, and yet they are avoiding organized religion. What's missing? By means of organized religion, certainly Buddhism is included. We have to think about that. Okay. All right. So you are accusing them of neglecting religious principles. What good, what harm would be done if they do that? And what's the reason That's the more important part. All right, so people may be lack of meta, but what are the conditions making them unwilling to produce, to give up more meta? We have to answer that. Data indicates that, say for example, when people understand the actual impact of their behavior, for example, giving, say, donation of money. This was experimented when people understand, say, each dollar, for example, you contribute to this particular nonprofit organization, let's say, I'm making it up, how many monkeys will be saved, okay, how many dogs on the street will be saved. When they understand that, it would greatly enhance their willingness to make contributions. The same principle can be applied to any nonprofit organization. If we wish, say, our followers in this particular temple to donate more, not necessarily in the sense of donating more money to the temple, but their time, their energy, their respect, whatsoever, okay, being generous, behave generously. If we wish them to do that, have we shown them, have we demonstrated to them what kind of impact their behavior can actually make? I think it's fair to say we haven't been quite effective in doing that. Like I said, we take it for granted, we fail to critically apply Buddha's teaching onto contemporary situations. This is not a matter of criticizing, but a matter of being effective. Okay. All right, so let's try to find out what makes people happy. There are macro level factors, there are also micro level factors. Number one factor, nobody will deny it, good governance. Meaning the government, along with the civil society, meaning all those large and small groups that bridge the government with the individuals. And altogether, they come up with the most effective way of distributing the resources in the society effectively, making everybody happy, making it harmonious. So Buddhism had very good example about this, the wheel-turning king. Okay? The Ashoka, if you will, in Indian history, was demonstration of good governance. Again, time does not allow me to give it a full treatment. Suffice to say that this point also did not slip unnoticed in Buddhism. Just you have to give it a more detailed elaboration. Economic prosperity. Undoubtedly, when people were struggling at the verge of life and death, its point was to talk about metta, talk about donation, talk about generosity to them. Okay? So there's a threshold. Beyond that threshold, then we can talk about community, talk about solidarity. Now, the rest about donation, about freedom of choice, it has to do with people's mindset. And here is the most relevant part. When people feel happy or feel their well-being is being improved, they actually did not mean to say the same thing. Over time, we have identified there are at least two different aspects about this sense of happiness. One is the so-called hedonistic, the other eudaimonistic. Okay? We don't care too much about the academic definition here. The first one essentially means they are looking for positive emotions. The point being emotion. So that implies what will make you happy. Smoking marijuana, if that will make you happy, that will fit into hedonistic perspective. They don't care as long as it makes them emotionally happy, positive. Okay. The second, as comparison, eudaimonistic. The second aimed at achieving excellence pertaining to life purposes. Obviously, Buddhism will fall into this particular category. It's about rationally arranging your life to achieve a sense of purpose. Now, here we did not attach any moral tag into it, saying that you have to be moral, wholesome, blah, blah, blah. By implication, certainly it's pointing to that way, okay? So, the authors of the World Happiness Report pointed this particularly out, saying people looking for hedonistic positiveness, they usually would consider using direct giving. In most societies, direct giving essentially meaning two things: giving money, giving time. In America, in particular, time is money, no doubt about it. This is direct giving. When they do that, this gives them a higher sense of well-being. Okay? I really feel fine. Okay? People, if they belong to the second category, they may not resort to direct giving. Instead, they would behave generously. Behavior such as, say, holding the door for the next stranger to get through. Okay? Say, paying respect for someone. Saying compliment, making complimentary remarks to someone. Showing compassion, things like that. It doesn't have to be really highly salient, small, tiny things, but it quickly increases people's chemistry, if you will, okay, when they get along with each other. And they do this not because they're expecting some return, especially materialistic return. No, they think that I'm doing this simply because these are good things these are to do. So, do we focus on one or the other? One obviously addresses the individual level of materialistic pleasures. The other more about rational, purposeful actions that addressing the social necessity when you want to achieve a harmonious relationship. Well, philosophically, if we follow Aristotle's example, both are needed. And so, the authors, the designers of the World Happiness Report also take these two into account. Okay? They have designed the question in such a way that people will force people to review your own self-identity, your own past life history. Why is it you say that you're not happy? What makes you feel unhappy? Was it based on your personal emotion, or was it based on your social relationship? Okay, so these are all incorporated, and they have found really interesting things. Buddhism also fit into both, and I might want to add that even for people who are way more concerned about hedonistic happiness, they have also understood that hedonistic or emotional happiness cannot be achieved alone, without the help, without the contact of the group. So obviously, how does Buddhism fit in here is, on the one hand, we find that our teachings are extremely helpful to make that happen, but on the other hand, not enough people can directly get those teachings. Okay? There needs to be some mediating factor. Namely, I hope that after tonight, some of you can be that mediator. Okay? To spread the Buddhist idea doesn't have to be always Vedanta doctrine, even though those are very important. All right, so here, the next is that we know the end result is harmonious social relationship, individual emotional improvement, blah, blah, blah. What is the mechanism that makes that happen? Okay, the mechanism here is how I connect the academic finding with Buddhist scripture. The mechanism discovered by the investigator of the World Happiness Report is that it was because generous giving and generous behavior highlighted and actually escalated people's sense of freedom of choice. On your own term, not expecting return. You can give money, you can give time, you can give compliment to people. That highlights this freedom of choice. Now, let me give you quickly the picture. See those different colors? The darker color indicating states and nations are demonstrating higher level of freedom of choice through generous behaviors. The lighter areas, with lighter colors, indicating in those countries people are less likely to demonstrate generous behavior, hence feeling less freedom of choice. As you can see, unfortunately, that small light area in Asia, that's Myanmar. Okay, so that indicating what? The overall ranking of Myanmar in terms of level of happiness actually fit quite well with people's self-awareness, if you will, and self-reporting behavior patterns. But exactly which type of behavior would constitute better mechanism to enhance freedom of choice is culturally relevant. I have mentioned that at the bottom 5, Rwanda and Burundi, okay, people not feeling happy there. But ironically, Burundi, the answer I believe was some 80% of people in Burundi reportedly during the past month, they have demonstrated happily generous behaviors to other people. That having said, overall, the country's level of happiness still not high. So there are other mechanisms. Anyway, so you have all kinds of cultural indicators pushing the entire population toward different orientations. The most generous type of social support will be given time and money, no doubt about that. And that would improve the well-being by giving time, either for the individual or for the organization. For people trying to, say for instance, say you're heading a certain organization, even a company, a private company, for-profit company, say you are also a Buddhist, you believe that Buddhism can really help improving the morale of your company, but you don't have the right tool to get this message to your people, okay, without lacking better wording, without getting into the trap that making your employees feel you are actually preaching, okay, that would be counterproductive. Instead, they just simply want to listen to a leader, not necessarily a religious leader, okay? If they want a religious leader preaching, they can go to temple or churches. But here, by identifying that the type, the mechanism that actually happens among all these people, you get the indication that what you can do in your own organization. Charity donation, they will activate directly something in your brain. It's called reward center. You know, the Pavlov test is that if you give positive rewards to a dog, you will reinforce the dog's certain behavior. Okay, similar mechanism also happen to people. If you find, say, for volunteers, if they discover that actually they can make a difference, they can observe that, not just being told so, okay? If they can observe that, that will greatly enhance their willingness to keep on volunteering. Same mechanism, okay? So, charity donation is one example, has the most profound effect of activating the reward centers, but also happen to a lesser degree of generous behavior. So-called generous behavior, all those down below, like holding door open for a stranger, paying someone a compliment, all those I have mentioned, even returning a lost wallet without knowing if the original rightful owner would get it back. Doesn't matter, but that would make you feel good. All these can be considered generous act. Generous act put into the academic category, we lump them together under one title is called what? Social support. You may not know these people, and yet by doing so, you make them feel in this particular society, in this particular community, this strong social support that will greatly enhance their sense of well-being. Okay? Even though we may poor, but this is a good place. I feel happy here. So this will be social support. And freedom of choice. Let's read this sutra. Drawn from Anguttara Nikaya. It's a dialogue between Ananda and the Buddha. They talk about wholesome morality, sila. Sila essentially, well, let's put it this way. The actual content will be sila, but really the function is to cultivate your virtue. Okay, so essentially that's what we're talking about so far tonight. Ananda asked the Buddha, what is the reward and blessing of wholesome morality? Essentially means what is the reward if I cultivate my virtues? The Buddha answered, freedom from remorse. By doing the wholesome things, you will not experience remorse. Okay? Meaning, if you don't get something tangibly positive, at least you know you are now getting rid of the negatives. Okay? Then the dialogue continues. What about, okay, so out of that absence of remorse, what more do I get? Joy. Out of joy, what do I get? Rapture. Okay, no remorse. Joy. You feel your entire body feel light. Okay? People who are meditating would have plenty of that kind of experience. With rapture, tranquility. Okay? Your mind no longer perplexed. Okay? It's so quiet. With tranquility, happiness. Now that's true happiness. Okay? With happiness, what happened? Concentrating jhana. With jhana, you can actually achieve vision and knowledge according to reality. That's true knowledge. Okay? Direct, penetrating knowledge of things as they are. That opens the door for the eternal or final liberation. You know the rest. Okay? This is almost a formatted prescription, if you will. And this particular sutra, Anguttara Nikaya, I believe it's the number, well, we can skip that, not much time, okay. Here, the point is highlighting the virtue, cultivating your virtue, it gives you that freedom. And this has been demonstrated so well in the Buddhist text. All you have to do is just link that to the world's real events. But since I am right now talking to Buddhists, I would want to add one more point as a precaution. Cultivating your virtues certainly will bring about many positive rewards. What I want to emphasize as a precaution is that you cultivate the virtues for the causes of the virtue, for their own sake, instead of looking at the consequences as desirable. Why is it this is so important? Let me give you the context. All right, here I'm drawing from another sutra. Digha Nikaya number 16, the longest sutra in the Digha Nikaya. Okay, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is Mahaparinirvana Sutra. Buddha was experiencing his final moments. As you can imagine, during this particular period, he just want his followers to stop asking silly questions. Okay, go practice what I had been preaching. And by doing so, he summarized this particular repertoire, the fruits of your virtuous behavior. Look at this. Great increase of wealth. This directly relates to my previous slide, why I have to emphasize about the causes instead of results. You could have plenty of wholesome causes that eventually causing the great increase of your wealth. You could also have very unwholesome means of increasing your wealth. Rob a bank, selling drugs. If you just look at the result, that may or may not give you the right cause. And therefore, this is really important. I have to, as a precaution, remind you. Okay? So, we know about the fruits, but do not look at the fruits per se to go about cultivating your virtue. Instead, look at the causes. Okay? So that having said, great increase of wealth as one of the rewards, favorable reputation, you don't tell lies, you're being straight, and then you have confident manner whenever you stand in a group. You will not be timid. You always have confidence. You have nothing to hide. You don't fear about losing anything. And for some people, this is even more important. Upon death, the serene death, but even more so after serene death, in the event that you experience another birth, you are almost guaranteed to have a rebirth in a happy state, in a heavenly world. So these are all some tangible, some less tangible rewards if you cultivate your virtue. This, of course, without the enlightened Buddha, who preached 44, 45 years, whatever, okay, because of that, we have the opportunity to learn from him. Certainly, you should keep that in mind. But then, that having said, the more important thing is, as he so compassionately, if you will, that during the last moments of his life, reminding us, okay, just go ahead, practice the teaching. As an elaboration, other texts also indicate the true mechanism where you can format or modulate your life in accordance with the Buddha's teaching, the so-called Eightfold Noble Path. And at least these three will particularly match into what we say so-called eudaimonistic life, namely right speech, right action, right livelihood. Now, because I'm taking up already a lot of time, I would simply say this much. I believe all of you understand what I mean, okay? And for those particular right speech, right action, right livelihood, essentially the entire Eightfold Noble Path to happen appropriately, you need to have admirable friends, good companion. Good companion is the entirety of your holy practice. Right. Good companion making the cultivation of virtues possible or more effective, more fruitful. If we transform that into, again, an academic term, that shows what? Social connection. Okay? So, this is what I said at the beginning, that people more and more realizing the fact that to be a moral person, to be a spiritual person, it is a dead end to be an individualistic person. Because these things, to be moral, to be spiritual, would only happen under a group collective context. Okay? It doesn't happen in an isolated fashion. So we are, on the one hand, addressing the individual practices and concerns. We are also highlighting the group context as well as societal or cultural factors. For academic concerns, these indicating level of analysis. For us, monastics, here I'm essentially reminding myself, that means each level of analysis needs to be addressed appropriately if we want to convey the message most effectively. For the individual practitioners, say lay followers here, most of you, that indicating the level of endeavor can go level by level from your very individual level, okay, good behavior, generous behavior, into promoting a group harmonious relationship, into eventually, if you can find enough like-minded people, create a different cultural value in the society. Say, for instance, in the United States, it takes generations and generations of people to finally observe that, say, freedom, democracy, or success as a central American value. It doesn't happen overnight. Same thing. So, that having said, the social connection, what we want to emphasize is that while addressing the social connection of individual alone with the group and the society, we are trying to promote at the individual level so-called pro-social behavior pattern. I have to emphasize here that the distinction is important. Pro-social, not pro-materialistic. For a reason I'll elaborate a little bit later. Pro-social has at least two levels of concern. Number one is that individual act under the influence of prevalent social values and norms. Say, well, what do we mean by norms? Certain things are not allowed in certain society, but not a biggie in other societies. Say, for instance, using marijuana. In the United States, it was predominantly considered, I should say, as a medical problem. In Great Britain, it's not a medical problem. It's a personal choice. Okay, you can use it for fun. Or drinking in the United States, it's a really serious problem. People are only allowed to drink when they reach the age of 21. In France, small kids drinking red wine from their childhood, not a problem. Okay, so cultural values and social norms would translate it into the so-called social karma. I am aware that the idea of social karma is somewhat controversial. Suffice to say, for now, okay, that it's a normative thing that you may or may not willingly accept from the group. But by being pro-social, that even if you don't, what's that for me?
It's a clock.
That's our clock.
Okay, I'll make it quick. Alright, so the way is that on one hand, even if you do not totally 100% approve of certain social norm or social karma, try not to violate it, creating chaos. So that would be pro-social. Secondly, importantly, pro-social does not mean that you have to pro-materialistic. Let me give you an interesting list. This is by a very interesting author called David Brooks. Okay, he wrote numerous books, and this particular one, The Road to Character, that was his previous book, eventually become the #1 among New York Times bestseller. That was in better days. He prescribed for Americans that there's a road to building up your character. Now, after one term of President Donald Trump, he believed that the United States is now into a darker age. And so instead of talking about building characters, he wrote another book. Here, he debunked, saying, this is essentially what he said, that the American culture was built upon 5 lies. Okay? All of them are pro-materialistic. What are the 5 lies? Here, #1, career success is fulfilling. He said that this is a malicious lie imposed on young Americans, making them believe that, all right, all you have to do is try to create a successful career, then you'll be ever after happy. They have to tolerate the anxiety. They have to tolerate with the brutal competition. And what happened when they truly achieve the so-called career success? They quickly discover they are not happy, and they feel betrayed. #2, I can make myself happy. Nothing can be more wrong. I've been reiterating throughout the night. Okay? Sure, if you feel yourself as a loser, then accomplishing something can make you feel you are being successful. But don't get me wrong, that accomplished thing per se, a success, if you will, does not give you a peace of mind. No, it was you thinking you have that peace of mind, and that needs to be corrected. This is a very important point. So again, I truly, at least on this particular point, admire the insight of David Brooke, okay, that he can see this. #3, life is an individual journey. Therefore, I don't care about people. I don't need other people. What happened when you do need to care and the company of some other people? You don't have them. Okay, something like, say, for meditators, when you're not doing too well, you can always, by recalling your past virtues, past generosity, to tranquil your mind. But what if at that moment you discover you did not have any past generosity? Okay, same thing. Similar thing here, okay? Life is not an individual journey. Okay? All those people who claim or who discover they have experienced a rather fulfilling life journey discover that they would only have that experience by having a loving mind. Metta, that is. And this is a really totally Western author, not a Buddhist. And yet they're saying the same thing. You have to find your own truth. Again, no. Truth was always subject to social construction. Okay? Rich and successful people worth more than poor and less successful people. What? Let me debunk this. Can you accept the statement that an individual is just a compilation of skills, not a soul, if you will? If you agree that, only if you agree with the idea that an individual is just a compilation of skills, would you agree that last statement? Rich and successful people worth more. What would make one person worth more than the other? Because they're more skillful, therefore they're rich and successful? Find it hard to convince anyone. Okay, so for David Brooke at least, that's also a lie. All these echoing what I mentioned in the previous slide, that's pro-materialistic. Okay, these try to avoid that as best as you can, okay? But don't mind that too much. The important is that trying to be pro-social. Think about what Buddha had taught. And hopefully, by combining the most concurrent study, also, I have even drawn on a best-selling author, okay? But doesn't matter. What he said is worthy. So by combining all these resources, I want to summarize my tonight's presentation. My idea is not to criticize any particular approach of disseminating Buddhism. Instead, it's rather a reflection as being a monk myself, that how do I best convey Buddha's message to a whole group of people who may not be interested in Nibbana, but who are certainly interested in good personal relationship and a harmonious community. That way, I believe my approach tonight might be a better approach. Okay. Thank you. That'll be
Thank
it.
you. Very interesting, very interesting.
Okay, Professor, you have the podium.